Hello again. Today we talk about episode 2, the cause of the Korean War and the hidden historical consequences. Okay, welcome back to our journey through history. In the first episodes, we trace the origins of the Korean War and uncover the truth behind the CCP's resist American and Korean narrative. Today, we continue this exploitation, focus on the immense cost China paid in the war, the historical fact of being designated an aggressor by the United Nations, and how the conflict altered the China's international standing and the prospect for the Taiwan's issue. Now let's continue to lift the veil and seek the hidden truths of history. First, the cause of the war, casualty and isolation. The Korean War was a profoundly costly conflict for China. According to the official Chinese data, approximately 197,000 Chinese soldiers dead and over 380,000 were wounded. U.S. estimates suggest even higher Chinese casualty. In contrast, American losses were significantly lower, with about 36,000 deaths and 103,000 injuries. The stark disparity in casualty reflects China's disadvantage in equipment, training, and strategy. The most severe consequence was international isolation. On February 1st, 1951, the United Nations General Assembly, with 44 votes in favor, 7 against, and 9 abstentions, passed a resolution declaring that the Central People's Government of the People's Republic of China is engaged in the aggression in Korea. This marked the first time the UN expressly labeled China as aggressor, and China was the only nation so designated in the Korean War. On May 18, 1951, the UN passed an embargo resolution against China and North Korea, prohibiting the export of arms, munitions, and petroleum, atomic energy material, and other strategic resources. This sanction excluded China from the Western world, forcing it to rely heavily on the Soviet Union. For the next 2 decades, China missed out on the golden era of the global economic, technological, and cultural development following World War II, plunging its people into hardship. It was not until the reforms and the opening up of the 1970s that conditions began to improve. Second, hidden truths. The CCP's historical narrative, the 2021 edition of A Brief History of the Chinese Communist Party, continue to describe the Korean War as resisting America, aiding Korea, and defending the homeland, proclaiming its victory as a milestone in the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. However, this narrative misses a critical fact. It does not mention China's designation as an aggressor by the UN or the resulting consequences. It obscures the war's origin, avoiding responsibility for the Kim Il-sung's proactive invasion. It ignores the war's disruption of a plan to reunify the Taiwan. This negative storytelling persisted in the CCP propaganda in 2021. China released films such as The Battle at Lake Changjin and The Sniper scene around the resisting American aiding the Korea to stoke nationalism sentiment, while showing little intent to restore historical truth. For instance, on October 23, 2020, Xi Jinping, in a speech commemorating the 70th anniversary of the Chinese troops entering the Korean War, reiterated the defend the homeland narrative, claimed the war's victory enabled China to stand tall in the East. Yet he made no mention of the economic and technological and diplomatic costs China incurred nor did he address how the war reshaped Asia's geopolitical landscape. So, the turning point for the Taiwan, one of China, the greatest strategic loss in the Korean War was the missed opportunity to reunify the Taiwan by force. Before the war, the U.S. Truman administration stance on the Taiwan was ambiguous. On January 5, 1950, Truman issued a statement declaring that the U.S. had no intention of interfering in Taiwan's affair or providing military aid to Taiwan. Secretary of State Dan Anson's speech on the Pacific Defense Line also excluded Taiwan from the Americans' defense parameters. However, the outbreak of the Korean War changed everything. On June 27, 1950, Truman announced the development of the 7th Fleet to the Taiwan Strait, citing the neutralization of the Taiwan Strait, contrary to the CCP's claim of invasion of Taiwan. This decision aimed to prevent escalation between the two sides. Truman explicitly demanded that Taiwan cease military action against mainland while also blocking a Chinese communist attack on Taiwan. The war was prompted the U.S. to reassess Taiwan's strategic value. Historians know that without the Korean War, China and the U.S. may have eased tensions or even established diplomatic ties in the early 1950s. However, China's entry into the war intensified U.S. and China confrontation, leading the U.S. to view Taiwan as an ally against communism. From Taiwan's perspective, the Korean War was a savior moment that spared it from the CCP control. After the war, the U.S. forged allies with Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, and others, forming a maritime containment line against China that continued to shape China's strategic environment in the Asia-Pacific region. The reshaping of Asia's geopolitical landscape, the Korean War not only altered China's fate, but also reshaped Asia's geopolitical framework. Before the war, the U.S. had no military presence on the East Asia's mainland. After the war, the U.S. troops become permanently stationed in the South Korea, and the U.S. formed allies with Japan and Philippines, Australia, and others, creating a encirclement around China. Historian William Strong argued that China's only victory in the war may have been securing a buffer zone in the form of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea along its northeastern border. However, this comes at tremendous cost. China not only lost opportunity for engagement with the West, but also sparked fear among Asian nations about its military might, prompting the long-term U.S. military presence in the region for the U.S. The Korean War was a named war, aimed at containing communism's expansion rather than the conquering China. Americans' true strategic focus was Europe, and its participation in the Korean War was to prove its leadership to allies. By the war's end, the U.S. global influence grew stronger, while China was left isolated. Then last one, the far-reaching impact of the war. The Korean War's impact on China extended far beyond the battlefield. It solidified the Sino-Soviet alliance, but also made China overly dependent on the Soviet Union economically and technologically. Post-war, the U.S. Union provided support for China's industrial development, but this assistance comes at a price. China's autonomy in international affairs was constrained. The war also altered the trajectory of the U.S.-China relation. Without the Korean War, the two nations may have reached some form of reconciliation. in the 1950s. Instead, that confrontation persisted until the 1970s, when Nixon's visit to China broke the deadlock for ordinary Chinese people. The war toll was heavy. Hundreds of thousands of families lost loved ones, and the nation's economy suffered under sanctions. The CCP historical narrative glorifies the war as a great victory, but really reflects on the long-term impact on the country and its people. Conclusion: the Korean War remains a deeply controversial historical event. It was not only a critical conflict in the early Cold War, but also profoundly shaped China's destiny. The CCP's resisted American-aided Korea narrative forced national pride, but concealed the war's true cause and the cause. So those two episodes, we hope to restore the complex facts of the history, letting the truth emerge from the river of the time. Thank you so much for watching. Appreciate it.